Okay, and we're live, and welcome everybody to episode 11 of the community podcast. Jesus Christ, I've been doing this for 22 weeks now. Yeah, 22 official weeks. Alright, first off, I want to thank everybody who's watching. Welcome. I want to thank Zezeb, who jumped in at the last minute because the guest I originally had planned couldn't make it. And I want to thank Gildhard for joining me today. And how are you guys doing?
Doing great.
Doing quite well, thank you.
All right, nice. Okay, so today we're gonna do a couple topics across the board, from politics till what we want to see in the game. But the first topic, as always, is you're gonna tell us how long have you been involved with the Ashes community and with the game itself. So Zezeb, you've done this before. It's I think your second time on the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't you start us off?
Well, I joined in with the Kickstarter, and then the community came about a few days afterwards when I figured out what I wanted to do with the guild exactly. I took a look around first, and then I made the guild.
Okay, you're running this big, and we talked about it on the last podcast you were on. You run this big economy banking guild, right?
Yeah, it's not big, but it is a fair-sized economy-based guild that is also PvP based as well.
All right. So Gildhard, what about you?
Yeah. Hi. Just real quick. Apologize in case you hear any sort of banging in the background. My neighbors is doing some kind of reconstruction, so. Just a heads up.
No worries.
Making sweet love in the afternoon.
Probably. But regarding when I joined AOC, I think I joined the Discord back in September. I found out about the game a couple of days after the Kickstarter ended, which was unfortunate. And then I joined the forums and the Discords within a couple of weeks.
Okay.
And he's been arguing with me ever since.
Yeah, basically.
No, basically. There you go. You found each other. It's beautiful.
It's a beautiful. It's a lifelong relationship of pure argument. We might as well get married.
Oh man.
Okay,
Hey, it's illegal in the
so-
States.
It's
So-
legal now.
So
Yeah.
the way this works, the way I operate every week is every Monday before the podcast happens, I go into the community Discord and I ask the people, hey, what do you want to see? What do you want to hear people talk about or whatever? And this week I brought up a topic that, to my surprise, got a lot of conversations going, a lot of hate towards the topic, a lot of love for the topic. So the first topic is, the first real topic is, should Ashes become competitive like other MMORPGs? So when I say competitive, right, everybody's gonna be like, oh yeah, the game has PvP, the game is competitive, yeah. I'm not talking about that sort of competitive. When I say competitive, I mean games like World of Warcraft, games of like Guild Wars 2. They every year they have big sponsored tournaments. Like for example, World of Warcraft has their World Championships at BlizzCon, where the prize money is more. I think 2014 it was $250,000 US. I think it's more now, but I don't know the exact amount. But it's a lot of money for a 4-man team. So with the competitive scene in MMORPGs being rather small compared to other games, like for example Guild Wars, like for example League of Legends, Counter-Strike, whatever. Do you guys think, or what's your opinion on maybe Ashes getting into the like esports, like competitive scene, or don't you guys want to see that? Like, what do you think, Zezep?
Well, I think it would be a good promotion for the game itself, and bring a certain quality of player on the PvP scene to the game. Now, I prefer open world PvP, where consequences matter, but arena PvP has its place as well, in terms of skills. So I think it's actually a benefit to the game and a benefit to the community. Uh, Now people will talk about toxicity and all that jazz, but honestly, you can't get away from one thing from the other. If you want the game to grow and be successful, I think that the competitive nature is where you want to be and what you want to encourage.
Okay, let me throw something your way before we get to Guildhard. Because, like I said, I put this into the community Discord and I ask everybody, hey, what's your opinion? What do you think? And a lot of people, they get real salty or real toxic real quick. But especially this time, a lot of people, like a couple people said, if you put something like esports into Ashes, a certain type of player would come to the community. That toxic type. That salty sort of esport player, which I didn't understand because I consider myself an esports player because I've been doing esports since I was 16. So, Zezep, do you think having an esports scene within the game would bring in a negative type of player base?
I understand their concern, but I don't share it. Basically, what you would see is, if it's not going to be an official esports, then I certainly see large guilds and large associations of players setting up their own gaming tournaments as well. So if it doesn't happen officially, I see it unofficially, and the attraction will be there for certain players. As long as the combat system is decent and not broken, you will have a competitive scene. If it's supported by the players, then so be it. If it's supported by the company, I think it's better for the overall health of the game. Actually.
Okay, Gildad, what do you think on that?
Regarding competitive scene for MMOs, I haven't seen personally a lot of games do it. I know, of course, there's like MOBAs and FPSs that do it quite well. But regarding specifically MMOs, in my experience, I haven't seen it a lot. Now, I do play BDO on and off, and I do know that there is a somewhat sort of like competitive scene where they'll have these tournaments in the Korean servers where it'll be like 3v3s in their specific tournaments. And as in my opinion, that's kind of cool. I enjoy those people being able to perform those things. I think that a competitive scene is necessary in a game, especially as time progresses and games get better and better. Regarding competitive scenes in the MMO aspect, specifically on combat, as long as the combat is quite intuitive and it is, quote unquote fun, and there is some skill involved, people will create competition amongst themselves within the guilds, within the organizations, as Zeb was saying earlier, if the studios themselves are not doing it. So I think it's necessary. I think people are going to be hardcore. They're going to be people who want to do competitive scenes regarding each other, regarding the guilds, just as much as they're going to be regular casual players who might want to dabble in that.
Well, I get what you guys are saying. I'm just like, I don't know. Maybe honestly, like, I gotta be the bad guy here again because somebody has to be the bad guy. I know a lot of people say, for example, a lot of people that play MMOs or get into MMOs, or a lot of people say, for example, that World of Warcraft PvP doesn't need a lot of skill. Where my opinion is, then you never really played World of Warcraft PvP on a high scale, on a high like elo, or a high ranking. Because in my opinion, even now, like it's been years since I played, so a lot of things change probably. But even now, when I watch the World Championship, I see there's a lot of like tactic going on, a lot of timing has to go into that sort of stuff. And the prize money, I know it's not a League of Legends or Dota 2 prize money. I get that, and I understand that because, it's not a MOBA. But still, everything above like $250,000 is still a lot of prize money. So I'm wondering if Ashes starts to have a competitive scene. And I'm not talking about what sort of competitive scene, but if you have people, for example, War Thunder, a game, I don't know if anybody knows War Thunder, but War Thunder has a system implemented where the community itself can create regulated tournaments within their community. So if Ashes would start having regulated tournaments with the set rules and whatever, do you think that Intrepid would go into the whole aspect of, hey, maybe we should explore this whole esports scene a bit more, because they see that, or they could see that people are interested in playing on an esports sort of level within the game. Like, do you think there's a possibility for that, Guildhard?
Yeah, I do. Like, for instance, right, we know that currently, with the information that we have, in a military node, there is a PvP combat trial that people have to go through in order to become a leadership position, correct? And if that's the case, people are already competing for leadership roles within the game through a competition. This is just basically an add-on for allowing it to be more inclusive, so that guilds or organizations can do it. And I think the studio, from what I've seen so far, really wants people to have agency over what they do in the game. And in this case, it'd be regarding competitions amongst each other.
So I talked when I like I said, every Monday before the podcast, like I said, I go into the Discord, and I talk to people about possible topics, and a couple people came at me with because of this topic. They came at me and said that they would like to see a competitive scene, but they wouldn't like to see it as, for example, Guild Wars 2, where you have a complete separate game where you don't need to level up, you don't need to grind, whatever. They brought up the idea of having professional players, make them play the game, not like like just do PvP or just do tournaments. Like, play the game, get better gear, whatever, and implement like competitive tournament guilds. By that I mean is that they, how you have guilds that claim we are hardcore PvP and all we do is PvP. But they approached me with the idea of having, for example, how Dota 2 tournaments, Dota 2 teams, they have like names, like Fnatic, Cloud9, whatever, and they have sponsors behind them. So they brought up the idea of having this whole team system within the game as guilds, and have people apply, for example, that want to get into the esports scene for the guilds, and have those guilds like have them being sponsored by whatever. Do you think people would like accept this sort of idea, Zeza? Because it hasn't really been done in any other game.
Yeah, basically, what you're saying is absolutely true. There probably should be a named team sub guild function, or not even a quote, not even associated with a guild, but something different from a guild. And that way they could train together, be together, have bonuses together in the leveling and getting of their equipment and that sort of thing, and operate on the same channel, maybe the same voice comm inside the game. So I think that that would benefit the game, and it would benefit the players themselves that want this particular type of activity.
Okay. Gildart, have you anything? You got anything to add?
Regarding, so it sounded like a two-part question. The first part was equalizing gear regarding a competition, and then equalizing gear when it comes to like the actual gameplay, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Okay, so regarding the first part, equalizing gear regarding competition, I think has a place. We want to see people's mechanics, their skills, their actual tactics, and the best way to really see who is "quote unquote" the better player, or the better player in that specific role, or the better strategic individual, is if the gear itself, or the power of the player, is equalized, so you can see what sort of tactics play out. And I think that does have a place in the competitive scene. Regarding equalizing gear when it comes to gameplay, that's a bit tougher to pull off. I know, for instance, like Guild Wars 2 does it quite well, where they're able to kind of modulate the players' levels depending on the group they're in, so people can still do content together. And I think that's an interesting and cool mechanic. I personally haven't gotten to play Guild Wars 2 to try it, so you guys would have to, give me the skinny on whether it works well or
Well,
not.
the way, like, it's honestly, it's a situation where everybody has a different opinion, and if you look, for example, if they make money with it, they make money, so I guess it's a success. If they have a lot of
Hey, now
players,
you got my interest.
yeah. No, like the idea that was brought up to me is because, for example, professional teams in World of Warcraft or Guild Wars 2, they don't really play the game; they just play PvP.
No, I do agree with this leveling system, and actually forcing the not forcing, but engaging these teams to play the game, because if they're going to be representing the game on any level as the championship team, they should know about the game.
Yeah, so that's pretty much the idea, because the idea they brought up is make them play the game instead of just PvP, and that way they have an interaction within the world itself. They have to do other things than just PvP, and the comment or the argument that was brought up to me is that way you show, because most of these PvP, most of these high-end ESL players, they also they stream, they do YouTube videos, whatever, and that way they show more of the game than just the PvP part, which also like is a good way to promote the game.
Yeah, I absolutely believe that. What about you, Guildhard?
No, I mean, that makes sense. I was thinking that it was in an isolated situation of like a competition itself. But if you're talking about like getting more PR regarding the game itself, then not only just competition, but actual gameplay, PVE, rating, etc., would help promote that much quicker.
Yeah. Okay. So that's. I think in this topic, like, we still have to wait and see how the PvP or how the gameplay itself and the game plays out, and what they're planning. Because from what I understood, Steven and Jeff, they never really got into the whole arena thing. If it's gonna be instanced, if the gear is gonna be how it is in Guild Wars 2, everybody gets the same type of gear. So I think as soon as we know that, I think we're gonna be able to see if it could go esports, or it definitely could not. Because, for example, I don't know, like, maybe this is my personal opinion, but I think like games like Black Desert Online or Arcade, there's never gonna be an esports scene, like a real esports scene, because of the the RNG and the level differences and whatever. Or do you guys think that even with a system like Black Desert Online, even if it not applied to Ashes, there could be an esports scene for games like that?
So regarding going back to BDO, I think there is slightly competition when there comes to like certain tournaments, because again, I know the company has had like 3v3s, and has hosted competitions like that, and I know that even in the NA server, there's of course like the regular guild will sometimes have these sort of impromptu competitions of group dynamic fights. So it's there, but regarding it moving on to a more like global esport aspect, I think the biggest detriment right now would be the gear. There's too much of a gear gap between players that makes it almost impossible to really see skill or mechanics come through unless you can equalize the gear coming in.
Okay. Zezep, any final words?
I love turtles.
All right. Strong words from a strong man. All right, let's jump to the next topic. This is something Guildhard is probably going to be really good at. And it's also one of my favorite topics is guild politics and leadership.
Yay.
Yay! Drama, popcorn. Everybody get the popcorn out. So I talked about this on a couple other podcasts before. I talked about this on the last community podcast we did. Guild politics is going to play a major role in this game. Like you cannot compare it to any other game. Because what you do with your guild, how you handle your guild, how your guild acts is going to have so much influence in this game. I think nobody has ever seen something like this before. Of course, there's going to be drama, but, you know, we love drama. That's why God created popcorn. So what I want to know from you guys now is, like, what sort of...
And lo, there be from the heavens popcorn.
Popcorn! What sort of ideas come to your mind when you think about, you know, the different type of nodes? Because we have divine nodes, military nodes, economy nodes. I'm missing something now. Economy,
Divine,
religious,
military, economy,
religious. Isn't divine the religious one?
Yeah.
Yes.
So economy, divine, military. And there's one more. Science, exactly, science. So we know of those four, and we know those four different types of leadership. So, and in my past, I saw guilds act horribly. I mean, like, horribly. Like, they are pretty much, they were the guild version of North Korea. Oh no, he said North Korea is gonna get hacked. Oh god. So, when you guys think of the different type of nodes, what sort of leadership would you guys expect from the several node types? For example, Gildad, what would you expect from, like, an economy node? Like, who should run? What's the best way to run an economy node?
Well, to my understanding, there was already ideas regarding the leadership positions in each node, right? So there was, of course, all this information is subject to change. But for economy nodes, I thought it was like an oligarchy where there'd be a few select people with the biggest bank to be able to be in a leadership position, if I'm not mistaken.
Wasn't the economy was the one where you buy yourself into leadership?
Yeah, an oligarchy.
Yeah.
I don't know if you buy yourself. You just prove that you're successful, and that's, you know, in the realm that matters to the economy node.
Yeah. So of course, if we're talking just leadership position, then it would be an oligarchy. The biggest bank or the biggest guild with the biggest funds would be able to take a seat, which then would probably lead Zeb to be sitting on one of those positions.
Oh yeah,
maybe.
That's guaranteed.
We'll see.
But it really depends on how they structure the purse of the individual regarding the seats. If guilds are able to straight up buy a position with guild funds, or, you know, if we're able to have player-to-player trading, and they're able just to give money to their GM or one of their officers or whatever, so that they can straight up purchase one, you're going to see organizations, alliances with the biggest purse form to just take seats.
Okay, so how do you think those alliances or communities would handle themselves? Would they be more dictatorship, more I don't know, whatever comes to mind?
Yeah, if we're talking guilds itself rather than the nodes. I know me and Zeb have had this conversation before. I think depending on the size of the guild and the alliance will dictate the type of structure that they have in the game. Most guilds run under a benevolent dictatorship, kind of. They'll have, you know, a GM, which will be the dictator, will lead the group, will lead how the guild will run. And then you'll have officers, which will basically be subservient to the GM and try to help push whatever, you know, big goal that they're having. And then you have members in general who are, you know, doing their own thing, but also, you know, paying tithes or helping the guild in general progress. And I think most guilds will run under a sort of, again, a benevolent dictatorship. That's how most games I've seen it run. Council type guilds where, you have or democracy type guilds don't usually really play into effect until you start talking large gaming factions.
And those council and democracy guilds will probably do very well in a science node where everything is determined by diplomatic
Relations,
votes. Votes with each other, with factions inside of the guild that want to do one thing or pull the guild somewhere. So I think that there will be room for all sorts of play styles.
So let me make the following statement, and I want you guys to either tear that statement apart or prove that I'm right. I think the simplest node where it comes to leadership will be divine node, because divine nodes go based off who has done the most for the node. So that guy is declared the leader, which seems simple. No need to worry. And I think PvP nodes, military nodes, you're gonna have the biggest amount of drama in there, because people are gonna try to cheat their way to leadership by grouping up within the, I guess they call it a Royal Rumble, where everybody fights everybody. So do you guys think that divine nodes, like I said, are going to be more stable compared to PvP nodes, where you always have that indoor competition to be the leader?
I think PvP or the military nodes would actually probably not be the most stable. You're talking about individuals who are fighting each other in order to take a position of leadership. That's the most confrontation a player can have, other than just attacking someone's economic aspects. So I think that would be one of the most influx arguments or influx positions compared to the other positions, because if you have a scientific node or an economy node, or those two specifically, you can just straight up buy your position and maintain that position by just having the biggest purse or the biggest votes because of your alliance. And you can literally hold a position just based off of, as long as you hold the alliance of your group, or as long as your guild does well economically, you own that spot. Regarding military, though, I think that's going to be in flux quite a bit. And then I'd say religious would be complicated, because we don't know the exact system in which it gets voted in.
Wasn't it like, I think I know, like, maybe Chet can confirm, maybe I have to look it up, but I think Steven said that it depends on who does the most like leveling XP for the node.
As in, like, quest for the node itself?
Yeah, I think what's it called? What's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. Like, yeah, who does the most like towards leveling up the node? I think that's the way he explained it when the node system came up on one of the live streams. I think it was even the one with Peon where he explained it, but I would have to go back and look up. But at least that's how I remember it, that the divine node is based on who does the most leveling XP for the node itself.
Okay. Then regarding that, I'm not exactly sure. That sounds like it would be a straight race to the top. Like, you're just whoever can do the most quests can get the position, rather than I have the biggest purse. I'm going to continue having the biggest purse because I play the economy, and I can just sit on this council seat of an oligarchy, or I have an alliance that will continuously vote me in.
All right. So Zazab, you have anything to add?
No. Guildhard covered it all. I'm not sure as Guildhard is about the instability of a leader being taken down by military combat. The military nodes, because I have a feeling that the guild organization behind the scenes will still play an effect. For instance, if guild leader A is the node leader, and then some Conan type wanderer wanders in, and he takes let's just say that he takes down the guild leader. I don't think that his health in the city will still be will be very good if he takes down the popular leader of a guild running the city. I have a feeling that the politics and maneuvering will still take place, even though you have to defeat the other man or the other woman in combat.
All right, let me turn a spin on this topic. Everybody who's watching, everybody who is part of the community, and even you two, we all been part of MMORPGs. And we all, one time or another, had an experience or run-in with some really bad, jerk-face, toxic guild leader. So with guild politics, leadership, and that whole thing going on within Ashes, do you think that there's a possibility that one guild leader, one really bad, I mean, I don't want to call him an asshole type guild leader, but that's what I want to call him, but I really shouldn't. But do you guys think that those type of guild leaders that are more troll, more negative towards their own guild, they just want to be on power, do you think they have a real chance, to be like a driving force on the server? Or do you think guilds like that, especially with guild leaders like that, will be driven out or pretty much be destroyed within a couple months because of the way they behave? Guildhard, what do you think?
I think there's always going to be a place for the quote-unquote asshole guildmaster. It's been my experience in all the MMOs that I've played that there's always going to be that one guildmaster that's like an asshole, but is very effective with his guild. That they're able to either effectively grind quite well, and so they have like a decent level power, or they're quite good at raiding, or what the niche of that particular MMO is. And you're going to have the asshole guild leader that is effective. And I think that always is going to occur no matter what. Even in Ashes, I believe there will be an effective, trolly sort of guild master, because even though he's or she may be a dick towards everybody else, to their own guild members, they're effective. They're quite a strong leader.
Okay, Zezep, anything to add?
To be honest, there's always a space for people who behave badly, and they make their own space, and they attract others that do the same thing. So it's not going to go away, no matter what system is in place.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, there's a thin line between someone who is confident and forward going, and someone who is an asshole. The issue is, it's hard to tell which one is which. Sometimes they straddle that line quite well.
That's true. It's like the dark side. Come and join it. We will make you stronger, but everybody will hate you. All right, let's jump to the next topic. And the next topic is completely insane, which is future content. And everybody's like, oh, what? Future content? The game is not even out. How can you talk about future content? Oh my god, you're crazy. You're cray-cray. And when I say future content, and this is where I wanna know your hopes and dreams and your wishes. What would you like to see as soon as the game comes out? The game comes out, it's a smashing success. It's the best new MMORPG since, I don't know, 2010. Whatever game came out in 2010. And the game does well, and within like a year or two, they announce a DLC or new content. What can you imagine? Like, make up something that you would really like to see within the game. Zezep, you go first.
Well, I would love to see a different. For instance, if we're based on a continent, I would love to see the next area of conquest interest be a series of islands. I think that would be an interesting sort of topography to kind of conquest and give interest of the to the players to explore and see. That would be probably an interesting landscape to kind of conquest with your guild or with anybody, actually.
What about you, Guildheart?
Man, this is a tough question. I think
go nuts.
The biggest. I think so I have two ideas in my head. Two big ideas that I could see happening is, one, they add on another archetype into the system, right? So we have the 8 currently. If they were to add, an example would be like a Beastmaster or whatever. Something that's an archetype class into that 8 mix. That would be a huge deal because then you have 8 subclasses, and that player could, it's a whole new 8 different type of roles to play. So I think that'd be one of the biggest push or one of the biggest patches that they could have regarding DLC.
So you mean like, for example, a mage as the archetype, and then subclasses mage.
Yeah, so there's mage, or tank, cleric. We have the normal 8 that can be used for any of that. But I'm saying add on in a completely brand new class that also can be worked into with the same conjunction as like a mage or a cleric tank or whatever. So the class could be, I don't know. Like I said, if I know that they have no interest in like transformation type classes, but if there was a quote unquote beast class or whatever. It would be that, and then you'd have the beast class plus rogue, or beast class plus cleric, et cetera, et cetera.
Gotcha.
Adding in a completely new archetype would be probably one of the biggest DLCs. Now, another idea I was having is if they completely transform the world of Vera for one of the DLCs. So I know in WoW there was like Cataclysm or some of the patches where they completely changed the way the map looks and the way the map feels. If they did the same with Vera, except they basically decimate all the metropolises, right? So there's no more level 6 or whatever the highest level is for metros in those node areas, and then they change and rearrange the map, effectively being able to pull off what Zeb was saying earlier, where instead of being like a brand new continent on the side, it's you might have split the whole continent right now in half or even in quarters. And completely change the landscape and the node types in that area, and even with that included, maybe even adding in new dungeons or new materials that can be used for like crafting or whatever. I think those would be the 2 biggest DLCs for them to do.
Okay. Excuse me. Okay, those sound actually like, I especially like the whole people build up the metropolis or whatever, and then because it's DLC, we're just gonna turn everything on its head. I like that. I love that idea. Well, what do you guys think about the following? Because we know we left Vera because of the corruption, and we went somewhere. All right, we went somewhere.
I thought the new place was called Vera, or the place we're currently gonna log into, the new old world, is called Vera.
Yeah, so the one where we pretty much play at, that's Vera.
Yeah.
All right. So, anyways, we came back to Vera, but we left the place. So, what if we, I don't know, because World of Warcraft does it, Guild Wars 2 does it. It's a portal. You can do stuff with a portal. You can go back in time. You can go to different places. But what if we go back to the place where we story-wise went to escape the corruption? And what if something, I don't know, is there that follows us back through the portal, and you got a whole new storyline that way, because you can introduce, I don't know, like forgotten technologies from the other world. You can maybe even travel to other worlds. Maybe you can even allow, as a conquering party or raid party, to go to other servers. Like,
no, I see that. I see, and I don't know about the idea of us going back to the world that was destroyed, because there might be a question of whether there'll be instances where you have to, like, instead of it being like an open world with no instance, you'll be forced to have an instance because it's a portal, right? And you're then traveling from one world to another world. I don't know how I feel about that, but I do kind of like. Oh, go ahead.
I'm not wild about server versus server combat, and the reason is because each server will develop its own culture, and the minute you have a server versus server ideal, then it becomes meaningless which server you're on. So I'm not wild about that. I like each server having their own personality, their own events, their own topography. I'm really about that. So that when one server's population looks on the other server's population, they go, oh, so that's what's changed. Oh, it's different here. This empire is bigger on the south instead of ours, where there's a larger one on the north. That sort of thing.
Okay.
No. Okay. But regarding the old world, I think it'd be kind of cool, and this would be a DLC kind of thing or a future content thing. If whatever is the reason that the old world was destroyed, let's say it was some sort of like new force or some sort of, creatures from another dimension, whatever it may be, whatever caused a cataclysm in the old world could then start to bleed into the new world, into Vera.
Okay.
That would make more sense to me. So instead of us going there, whatever is over there, that's, the big and bad, starts to bleed into our world. That would make more sense.
So
I absolutely agree. I think that eventually, either through DLC or events, we're going to see what spawned the corruption and what comes through the portals to come and get us, basically,
well,
chase us down.
with the way you phrase it, bleeding into the world, what I could imagine is because of I don't know, something happened with the world, I don't know, something got triggered, that now you have this DLC going on, and like I said, the old bad evil bleeds within the world. Now you can have like world changing events like all over the world.
Yeah, I think it'd be kind of cool, especially if not only with that bleeding effect of like, this corruption or whatever, it starts to affect, like, you might even push a content where it might affect not only the creatures in the area that you're in, but the players themselves. What if players start getting corrupted by whatever that corruption was on the other side of that portal? What if your archetype, whatever your class is, can become slightly corrupted? So instead of clerics just having pure heals, they now have a slight poison effect on their heals. It's a good and bad that happens to them.
Okay, gotcha. Well, I think there's a lot they can do, and I think they do have the imagination to pull off a lot of awesome things. So honestly, I know this sounds kind of silly, but I really cannot wait any longer. I really want to know what comes after the launch.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested in their game plan of what the storyline is going to be for basically evolving, changing worlds with different guilds and different organizations and different alliances making up the landscape of each world's politics, making it essentially a Game of Thrones in each world. I'm very curious to see how they're going to have a cataclysmic event or a more subtle event, even that's more insidious, going from node to node.
Is it? You just broke up, is it?
I said going to from each particular server.
All right. Let's jump to the next topic. Here we go. Why are people so drawn to Ashes? And this is pretty much a feel good, like your personal opinion. And why are people so drawn to Ashes? And
I'm not sure. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
And I'm gonna start us off, because I think, at least for my generation, for the type of player that is a lot like me, who started off really early with EverQuest 2, and then World of Warcraft, and back in those days, those games were like the game-changing things. Like, holy shit, MMORPGs, they work, they are fun. And in the last 8 years, there has not been a game that really like shook people to their core. And I know, like, saying shook them to their core is a little bit maybe over the top, but kept people satisfied for a longer period of time. For example, if you go into when Star Wars came out, or Wildstar, all promising games, but there was always one thing missing, because the publisher or somebody on the higher end of the table decided, hey, you need to push this game out, or you need to make this game this and this way, because we need to make money. I think a lot of people that actually read up on Intrepid, read up on the game, and actually, do their own research, they realize, holy shit, this game is made by a gamer who has a lot of money. I know, like, Steven is, on the high end of the table when it comes to money-wise, so he's financing the game himself, and they realize, hey, this is a guy who wants to make a game that is fun. Not just to make money, but also to play it. And I think that whole idea, and also the transparency that Intrepid shows to their community, to us, to you, to me, to anybody in chat, to the moderators, shows that they are really serious about making a game that is there to last, and that really fulfills those MMORPG needs. Because a lot of people are also complaining, when I brought up this topic in the Discord, they're also complaining about, other MMORPGs, they don't really give a shit about the community. All they want to make is money. And I think that whole mentality goes really well with people? Or Gildart, what's your opinion? What do you think people are drawn to Ashes?
I know what I was drawn about it. So specifically, one, that the Intrepid Studio was so transparent with what they were doing. My experience is mainly Korean-based games, East Asian games. So I played like Age of Wushu, BDO, things like that. And
My
because
Little
of
Pony.
that, I wish. But because of that, I've never had like I've never gotten the pleasure of, having a studio just be so transparent with what they're developing and what their ideas are for the future. And I think the fact that, we get roughly once every 2 weeks or once every week or so, a Twitch stream regarding, what they're working on, what their ideas are for the future content, and that they're just upfront about what they're doing and how far they're progressing is refreshing. And I think that's one of the main things that drew me in. And another big thing was the node system. I am a politics and guild kind of guy. I enjoy the politics. I enjoy guild warfare. I enjoy the upper echelons drama as much as I love the content of any game. And with that being said, the fact that nodes not only do we create this world specifically based off of what we desire in the sense of where we want to have our major cities or the node levels of those areas, but the fact that we can de-level them afterwards, right? That the fact that you can go to war and completely decimate a node and drop it down from a metropolis to a level 5 or even level 4, and completely change the landscape based off of the alliances and the politics of that server is, to me, one of the biggest draws of Ashes, outside of their archetype system.
Okay, Zazab, what about you? What do you think?
Well, the economy is really what drew me to this game. Most fantasy games don't have a working economy that does well with itself. They usually requires a lot of tinkering from the company, or it's an afterthought. This game doesn't seem to be an afterthought. It seems to be one of the central ideas. And much like Guildhard, I also enjoy guild politics and diplomacy and that sort of thing. And I can't wait to watch this particular community engage, and it already has engaged fully, even before the game is launched into Alpha Zero. So it's actually a very vibrant, socially the sociology here is really what draws me. Tell me about the economy, tell me about the politics, and you have a living world. In my opinion. There's other games that it really doesn't matter what the relations are. It really doesn't matter what the guild what you do in the economy, because the company is very heavy-handed with it and doesn't allow much freedom in terms of the economy. And I think that all of those things are expressions of characters and expressions of players' desires that really come through and really kind of shine. And if the company is smart, they encourage it, in my opinion, especially in something where you create, like Guildhart says, nodes, which the node system seems the most complete thing I have seen so far in terms of building and creating societies, place livings. So that particular terminology, yeah.
No, I feel you. I think also what people really like about the game is there hasn't been a game where you really do have an influence on the world. I think that's something people have been waiting for ages. I mean, in World of Warcraft, always you play a story. That's one thing. Guild Wars 2, you play a story. Arcade, pretty much the same. Okay, in Black Desert you have nodes, but they don't really influence what's going on in the world. So I think a lot of people, they're really waiting to see how is this working? How do we influence the world? And I think there's a lot of potential for that. I think a lot of other people also see that. Talking about potential and talking about making money and being something else besides a warrior within the world. Let's talk a little bit about player professions. We know there are some player professions that are already been confirmed, but what I want to know from you guys, and this is where you can also go nuts and be completely off off the table and just make something up. But what sort of like player profession would you guys like to see, or are you already satisfied with what you heard from Intrepid? Guildhard, what about you?
Regarding player professions,
Yes.
as most people probably already know, I'm excited to see where alchemy goes. That is the profession that I personally care for. In most MMOs that I play, it's always been the crafters for armor or weapons that make the most money and the most impact. I'm hoping in Ashes that alchemy has a huge role in the world, whether that's alchemic transformation of materials, or that there's utility potions or any of those sort of things. I hope that alchemy has a big part. An interesting profession that they just kind of they made a side mention to in one of the panel discussions was a tattooing system. Now they didn't really elaborate on this system, but if it is a profession, that is a really interesting concept, something I haven't seen in any other MMO. A tattoo professions that might, and this is again, we're jumping on tangents that we don't really know, but if this tattoo system allows for like base increasement of stat points, like you have higher agility or you have higher strength, it becomes very prevalent to the same level as what gear would be.
Okay. So would those tattoo professions create their own tattoos? Or do you want them to just learn recipes and then tattoo people?
What I'd hope, and again this kind of goes back to alchemy, is the ink to use for a tattoo would be made by an alchemist, but the actual application and the, let's say, the RNG of whatever
You want everything to be an alchemist. I accuse you.
Yeah, you could accuse me. I'm not going to deny it. I want alchemy to be prevalent in the game.
You're trolling us.
Well, regarding tattooing, I'd hope that the ink would be made from alchemists, but like the actual RNG, and the application of such a thing would come from a tattoo individual.
Okay. What about you, Zezep?
No, first of all, the tattoo sounds very exciting. Sounds very interesting. But you have to be very careful not to have it unbalance items and other things. Because if not, then it would be a simple in-game pay-to-win kind of system. And I do believe it should probably be recipes, and applications is probably the simplest thing for them to implement in the game. And that way, you could apply the tattoos to many different body types, and you would have a standardized list, like an eagle or a snake does this or that sort of thing. It's probably, and then that way people can actually share information about the tattoo profession as a mystic class, a mystic profession. So that particular thing. Now, professions are very important to the economy. You got to get the basics that people love: woodworking, ironworking, smithing, that sort of thing. Tailoring, because people love their fashion,
Okay.
and light cloth users as well. But in general, I would love to see more interesting professions that they come up with.
Let me ask you this, because I thought about this as well before we started the podcast. I would like to see a profession named inventor. And when I say inventor, I mean towards sieges, because we know there's going to be siege weapons in the game. We know there's going to be catapults, ballistas, I don't know, you name it. So what if you have an inventor class or an engineer class that can play around with the individual parts of a siege weapon, like the gears, the springs, and use different materials. And by combining different materials, maybe just by accident, create a bonus for that siege weapon. And he cannot pass on the combination of the materials he used, because they're locked to his character. Even if he passes along the recipe for, like, hey, listen, I used 30 wood, 40 iron, and I don't know, some magical unicorn stuff on that trebuchet to get this bonus, it will not work for another engineer.
For Guildhard, magical unicorn stuff is alchemy.
So
I'm just saying, I'm just calling it right now.
No, I think that's an interesting idea. I don't know how I feel about locking out RNG, procs to specific players, right?
yeah,
I think if you're talking about siege weapons or anything like that, I think a lot of that has to be, standardized recipes. Now, I think if you want to add an RNG proc, you have to apply it, universally to all characters or to all players.
let me put it this way. Let me put it in an alchemist sort of way. You're an alchemist, and there are recipes that every alchemist can learn till the highest level. But then you start to experiment around with different, aspects, let's say, of a health potion. All right.
Sure.
You use 20 of this, 20 of that, 10 of that. That's the basic you use. But then you play around. For example, then you do 23 of this, 22 of that, 27 of this. And you still get the same health potion, but you also get like 10 shield, or 10 health
Sure.
regeneration. And that's completely RNG that is locked to your character. That means you're the only character on the server that has that recipe. Right? Therefore, you're already known in the world for, listen, hey, that one alchemist, he also has that one recipe. He's valuable. He's known within the world. Wouldn't that also
I would personally like that, but for the sake of the game, I would not want that. Like, I think if you want to do experimentation regarding recipes and you proc some special recipe that it's not part of the regular list of recipes that you can do as an alchemist or whatever profession you may be, and other players have the chance of procking that same sort of special recipe, if they have the ability to proc it, then that's fine, right? You can have the greatest, craftsmanship of armor, right? Whoever that may be, someone who's making these leather pieces. And, during his leather building phase of, building hundreds of these, chest pieces, one day he does a bit of experimentation and he procs a special recipe that not only gives him the base stats of those armor pieces, but also, an additional damage spec,
Okay.
That is fine as long as every player has the ability or at least the chance of proccing that.
Okay.
You being the only person because it's locking out everybody else is not okay, but you being the only person because you're the only lucky one so far is all right in my opinion.
Well, I'm not saying locking out complete. I'm just locking out for that one recipe you experimented with.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like it.
I think what he means is let's say that it gives you plus 10 health, this particular recipe. That therefore he couldn't get another type inside of that type of a special recipe. Is what Giant is saying.
So like you get plus 10 armor, but then also you proc that again, and you get like a plus 10, mana. Is that
no? That you would just get the plus 10 armor.
No. What I'm saying. And yes, Senpai, I know that we know that Intrepid already confirmed that newfound recipes will have a patent and it's going to be locked for a couple of days. Now, what I'm saying, what I'm trying to explain is, for example, let's make this real simple. You create a sword. Right? For that sword, you use 2 iron bars, 1 stone, and 1 unicorn horn. Right? That is the experimental recipe you're using, and it procs an awesome sword. So now, from now till the server dies,
only you can make that sword
with those. No, you cannot. You're not the only one who can make that sword, but you're the only one who can make that sword with those ingredients. Then somebody has to experiment around, but he uses 2 iron bars, 1 stone, and 2 unicorn horns. Then he can also do the exact same sword. So I'm talking about experimenting around with different ingredients and the amount, and then if you unlock something, then that recipe with those materials is locked to your character, because that way you are known within the world for being able to do that.
Well, I would think the rarity itself would be something that your character would be known for. If you experiment a certain amount of time, you get the ultra rare recipe of undoing on a shield, and therefore you're known to produce shields of undoing, because basically you have it, and it's extremely rare to get it. I don't know about locking it. I don't know. I'm sorry, Guildhard.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead. I don't know about locking it behind one particular person. I'm not in favor of that.
All right.
Yeah, I'm okay with the idea of there being a super rare recipe that you experimented your way through and figured out, and you got these awesome procs. And from now on, not only do you have the base recipe that is probably available to everybody, or at least unless they're going to drop recipes in dungeons, which I know some games do that. And then you have to get you have to play the dungeon, and then hopefully get the drop, and then you'll be able to read that recipe. But let's say it's like some nice base high end sword, right? If everybody can get that recipe, and then you make a special proc, or you do a special recipe, or you experiment, and then you get an extra proc on top of that nice sword, I don't think the recipe should show up for everybody else. That I don't agree with. Like, that special proc recipe is your special proc recipe, but I don't think that should lock out anybody else from getting that same proc.
Okay.
So if you get this special recipe, you don't have to tell anybody what the recipe was, right? It's your special recipe that you experimented, that you put in the effort and worked for. And when you throw it up on the marketplace for being the best crafter of this specific sword, and your swords not only are like every other sword of that class, but also have an additional stat, you're well known because everyone will buy your thing because your thing provides more benefits. But at the same time, you're not locking out from anybody else from figuring out that recipe. It's just that you're not telling everybody what that recipe is. There's a difference. And
I
of
just
course,
want to
RNG
point
with
out that Guildhard said your thing provides more benefits, and I laughed a little inside.
that.
All right, let's jump to the last topic. So we don't know anything really about the story of the world besides Vera, two worlds, portals, corruption. So with MMORPGs, always having some sort of really good story, depending on the writing. What sort of story arc? And you can be really vague here, or you can go in depth. I don't really care. Would you like to see? For example, let me go first. I would like to see, and this is gonna go nuts for some people that watch anime. I would like to see some Sword Art Online. The player is the real bad guy sort of thing. I would like to see that somebody starts a quest, and then he gets a message by the GM that says, "Hey, listen. You're the bad guy. You need to hide being the bad guy and get people to help you doing whatever it is and get people excited for it. And then at the end, you can turn around and either help them and get less loot, or kill them all in the last boss room and get all the loot." I would like to see that sort of story going on in the world. What do you guys would like to see? Do you guys like to see, like, I don't know, something like Wrath of the Lich King, or some Guild Wars 2 storylines like Zeza? What would you like to see?
Well, first of all, let me tell you that some players don't have to hide that they're the bad guy. They're already being the bad guy, and they enjoy that role, and that's important to have people that are not with the rest of the groups. Hunky, everything is hunky dory, and they will make life difficult. But that's the real love of a sandbox, is that you have people to fit into their roles that they like, or no role at all. Create your own. But I am not in favor of huge storylines, because I think that we will already have huge storylines within the game itself and the politics within the game.
Okay.
And just watching Guildhard destroy guilds, this is going to be amazing.
What about
regarding the storyline? Personally, I think a cool concept, and this is a little bit on tangent, but a cool concept would be, as a player, when you first log in, instead of it just being at the starter zones, you start off with like a little mini mission / cinema play, where you're on the other side of the portal. You're on the part of the world where it's being corrupted, and you're running through that area, trying to get to the portal within a time frame. Maybe there's only 15 seconds, 20 seconds, whatever. So you get to see the sort of destruction that is happening with you, and maybe you get like clues or glimpses of things that are happening next to you as you're running through that could be alluded to in the storyline. And then, of course, you jump through the portal and boom, you're on the other side. But I think if there was some sort of cinema play at the very beginning like that, where the player gets to like be like, holy shit, everything's going bad. I'm running through trying to get to this portal. And other players who are like looking around can pay attention and catch clues. I think that'd be a great way to start introducing the story to the player right off the bat. Now, I do like the idea, like now that you've mentioned it, regarding a specific player being the bad guy. But that'd be very tough for the studio just to be able to be like, we know this person is going to be here permanently, and we can make them the bad guy until, you know, whatever patch or whatever DLC comes through.
Yeah, that's
it seems a little difficult to implement.
But you know, they said it's hard to get on the moon, and they were on the moon.
I don't think it's impossible. I'm just saying it might be difficult now.
I'm just saying, like, I'm like, here's what I think. I'm like, all right, somebody picked up this insane storyline, this insane quest where you have to go and kill the big bad boss, and you're at the last boss room, and all of a sudden, one of your teammates, one of your guild members, you have been fought aside for the past, I don't know, 3 weeks. It goes around and says, haha, I'm the bad guy, you have to beat me, and all of a sudden the gem gives him couple superpowers, and now he's the bad guy, he's the new boss monster, and now it's all of a sudden it's not PvE, it's PvP, because, you know, guy went Super Saiyan.
I think as a raid, that'd be a cool concept.
That
like, especially as a raid itself. Like if you're in a raid and you're doing it, and then
one at random gets selected to be the bad guy, that'd be hilarious.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be great, because now you're like you've been playing this whole raid with this group, and then at the very end you're just like, everyone make sure you select to be the good guy, and you're gonna have, you know, instances where someone is gonna be like, nah man, I want better loot. And they're gonna turn on the whole group, and then they become the last big baddie. As a raid, I think that's a great concept, but as a storyline, I think there's a lot of difficulties regarding that. If you want to put that, you know, within the actual Vera storyline.
So let me ask you this, because you said the whole, you know, you need to run to the portal thing. Do you see that also as an opportunity to maybe put in a tutorial for the game before you enter the world? You pretty much leave the old world, you learn all the basics you need to know, and then you enter the new world?
Sure. I mean, that you could make it into a tutorial, you know, if that would be a pretty clever way of killing two birds with one stone. One is a cinema cutscene of what's going on, and you kind of get clues of the story, and then also you get the tutorial out the way, like movement and, you know, whatever basic attacks and whatever. And I think that would be a good way of, you know, killing two birds with one stone.
What I would like to see, and I think that would be a great way to know, you know, to push some major storylines within the world, is, you know, if you start off with a small event, like, I don't know, there are two goblins fighting, a red one and a blue one, and you decide to kill the red one instead of the blue one, right? Based on that decision, a whole new storyline opens up that can, in the end, I don't know, spawn a huge world boss that can de-level a node, or, you know, I don't know, opens up a new raid for a group. Like, that's like the sort of thing that I would like to see. And that's,
I think what you're asking for, Giant, is choice and consequences mechanics, which is very desirable now. Before it used to be just play out the storyline. The storyline is going, and this is not to do with MMOs. It has to do with gaming in general. But people get tired of being led by the nose and want some influence now on the storyline itself.
That's true.
And I think that this particular game shows you that you can have influence on the world. So why wouldn't you be able to have influence on the storyline itself proper?
I think you will have influence in the storyline in regards to your specific node, right? So you'll have quests and, you know, missions and tasks to do in the node, and dependent on, you know, what the node individual group has done and made a decision on, whether they, you know, help that goblin or kill that goblin, will spawn a dungeon in correlation regarding that. And I think that is easier to pull off node to node to node versus trying to pull that off regarding the entire storyline of Vera.
Okay. Right, so that's actually for all the topics. I have one question I got from the forums, and I'm gonna read it out loud. All right. Zonia T90 asks, do you guys think that gliding mounts or gliding in general will make the world smaller than it already is? Well, first off, we don't know how big the world is. I think the question goes more towards about gliding and what our opinions are on it. For myself, I have to say, I already am happy with it. There are no flying mounts. I don't like the idea of gliding. It makes every time you fly or glide, it makes the world look smaller. So I could live without it. Zeza, what do you think?
I could also live without it. I always felt that gliding was a wounded baboon version of flying, and it's like, no, the developers are not going to give you so much ability to traverse, just a little bit. Now it does open up neat abilities for mounts and collectible mounts and training and that sort of stuff. When you have gliding abilities, like you could get a I don't know a magic jellyfish that kind of puffs its way across the landscape. But that being said, it does make the travel times reduced for everybody, and I think that's not what they want to have. They want to have the world have consequences in terms of travel. If you travel here, it's going to take a while, and it's not going to be easy to get back. So I think it's just making it a little easier where they don't want it to be easy.
Regarding gliding, so I alpha tested or beta tested, can't remember what it was, for Arcage, and being able to glide over water to be able to steal people's packs and attack their ship was a great mechanic in my opinion, because it was a lot of fun. It didn't matter if you were a melee class or range class. You could hop across with your glider to the other boat and attack it as a melee player, which was what I was playing at the time. So I think that's a great concept in that particular instance. But regarding gliding mounts and gliding on the continent itself, I'm not a huge fan of also. I think I like the fact that there is technically no fast travel unless you're like a science node at Metro 6, but that there's no real fast travel across the world. I like the fact that there is no technically instanced area where you can just hop from one place to another. If you want to travel from point A to point B, node A to node B, you have to physically move across the map. I'm okay with the idea of like AFKing when it comes to if there was like a player-driven caravan. That's a cool concept. But regarding you yourself being able to travel quickly through the map, I'm against it.
All right, so I guess we're all on the same page. All right, so that's pretty much it. Guildhard, Zezab, thanks for being on the podcast. So this is now the time of the podcast where anybody who is in chat, anybody who's still watching, if you guys have a question for Guildhard, Zezab, or myself, now is the time to ask. Because Guildhard and Zezab, you can plug yourselves now, your guilds, anything you want to plug, you can plug while we get any questions from chat.
I'll let Zeb go for. Oh, all right.
No, you first. Into the lion's den, sir.
So plugging in my guild Enmity and one of the GMs, Goat, is fantastic. So far, they're a great group of guys, and I'm enjoying my time with them.
That's it, man.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm very
love the people. That's
I'm
about
very
it.
disappointed. No. It's over. Your time is over, sir.
All right.
God. Anyway, my guild is fantastic. It's the best guild in the world. So,
honey, get the shotgun. We got another one.
My guild is First World Bank, and we are an economic PvP guild, and we look forward to dealing with you one way or another. We are based on the Iron Bank from Game of Thrones. And if you are interested, drop me a line. I'm always in Discord. Thank you.
All right. So I guess there are no questions. There is only, I don't know if it's a meme or if it's a real question, but somebody's asking about DPS meters.
Oh my God, we were having this conversation.
No, please. God, we don't have time.
I think we're done with that conversation for the next couple months.
Just know that I agree with these DPS meters. I'm okay with it.
Oh wait! We got one! Yay, senpai! Thank you for the question. What do you expect from coastal and island nodes? Do you think the cooking professions will be important as it is either? Is it in every way providing? All right. So what do we think about island and coastal nodes? I think they're awesome.
I think they're going to be very desired, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah, because people like to fish, and
Well, people also like the safety or the supposed safety of an island, but I actually think that the naval combat is going to be as prominent as several recent games, and it's going to be more. You should view it as an avenue to get places quicker, not as a place to hold up.
All right.
I personally hope that there is a node on an island off the coast, and I hope that node is an economy node. That way, that the marketplace is still universal throughout the entire region, and that node gets to level 6. So that one, they have the defensive capabilities regarding the ocean being, a hard gateway to get across, and two, that they're not really pressed regarding, needing to travel back and forth to the continent because their entire zone of influence has a marketplace.
Gotcha. So we definitely know that naval combat is coming. So with naval combat, there has to be an ocean. So I'm pretty sure we're gonna see something like that, and I cannot really wait for it because naval stuff is awesome. I love naval stuff. And Senpei also has a second question. Do you think cooking professions will be important as in every other game? So by that he means, do you think through cooking you're gonna get like buffs and stuff like that? And I hope so, because it has raids and you need raid food, because I want raid food, because I want to yell at people for not eating their raid food. Because that's what I do. So I hope cooking is important.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is going to be important. I think it is going to be a very desired trade, and people who engage in cooking will spend a lot of time on it, but we'll see economic rewards from that.
Yeah, I agree. Cooking should be in the game. It's a staple in MMOs.
All right, awesome. So we went over a little bit, 15 minutes. So Giltard, Zezab, thanks again for being on the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for watching, and hope everybody has a good weekend. Everybody stay safe. Everybody, good morning, good evening, or good night, depending on where you are. And I see you all on the Discord, probably, hopefully. And we will be back in 2 weeks with new guests, new topics. And yeah, everybody stay safe. Take care, everybody.